Today we're talking about unindexed records and how to search them, because a lot of people really kind of get shy and they like, oh, it's unindexed, it's going to take me forever. No, it's really not that hard. And you can find your ancestors in unindexed records or partially indexed records, as I'm going to demonstrate today. Now, this originally came up as a question at the Genealogy TV Academy. We ended up going into this demonstration. I'm going to share that clip with you now. But before we get into that, there is a handout for this. That information is in the description box. And then you can kind of search these records. Now, they're not hard to search. You just have to employ some strategies, and I'm going to kind of go through how to do that. Now, what I'm going to be demonstrating in this clip is a Quaker record, and just so you know, this also is a partially indexed record, but my ancestor was not indexed. So the strategy is the same, whether they're partially indexed or fully indexed. And also, here's a tip: just because a record is indexed doesn't mean everybody appears. I've seen census records where people were missing that we know were in the household. Long story short, there are a lot of times in a lot of different record sets that you may find people that are not in the index, as I will prove to you in this clip. The lesson here is about unindexed records. This is a partially indexed record. So you can see that there are some people indexed in here. And if you don't know how to do that, that's that little people icon right there. Okay. And we can turn off and on this film strip right here. Okay. We're just going to pretend this is totally unindexed because it's really pretty much the same thing. My ancestor is not in the index. I can tell you that now. So I want to go find her. Well, we want to start with what we know. This is Margaret Clark, and she married a guy named John Henley. She married in September of 1816 in Randolph County, North Carolina. So we know that. Now, my thinking is knowing the Quaker records helps to know the record set that you're looking at. But knowing, because I've just done so much work in these records, that I know that she should be in, at minimum, the women's minutes and also the men's minutes, because the Quaker tradition was that they had to go before both meetings twice and announce their intent to marry. So I'm thinking, okay, there should be an intent to marry. There should be a variety of things. All right. So this first record we can see is 1793. Well, we need 1816. So we need to first evaluate this record set and see how it's organized. Because these are handwritten records, I would suspect that they are in chronological order. So what we do is we pop ahead to, say, I don't know, over here. Oh, that's a hard one to read. Let's go over here. And this one says 1796. Okay. This is looking like it's going to be in chronological order. 1798. Let's go ahead a few. This is what I call the hop, skip, and a jump method. Here we have 1805. Okay, so we're making progress. So these do appear to be in chronological order. Now, as you're going through here, you always want to be looking for book covers, front matter to see, because sometimes record sets start over again, page numbers start over again. Sometimes documents are in loose order and they aren't in any chronology, and oops, the box fell on the floor, the papers went flying everywhere, and the clerk just scooped them all up, stuck them back in the box. Now, it is common practice that when people are microfilming or photographing records in a box, in a folder, in a book, they photograph everything. They cover the cover of the book, then they open up and you'll see blank pages. They're going to image each one of those. And if it's a loose folder of records, they're going to be photographed in the order in which they were in the folder. That's why when you go to an archive or a library, they say you have to keep everything in the order. I don't care if it's out of chronological order, they'll tell you put it back the way it was found. Because even if the records are out of chronological order, they don't want you putting them into chronological order. They want you to put them in as they were found. And that's just archive stuff. They do that all the time. So let's skip ahead. Before we get back to that, if you're finding value in this, I hope that you will consider subscribing. This way you will get notified of more videos and more free tips about genealogy. All right, let's get back to it. And we are on 1811, so we're going to skip ahead a little bit more. We are on 1813, I think is what that said. I'm looking for dates. 1816. I am on the image I need. Okay, so I'm going to scroll to the top so you can see this. But this basically says there's a complaint against Margaret Henley, formerly Clark, for accompanying her marriage contrary, which means contrary to the Quaker traditions. Therefore, this meeting disowns her, which means they're kicking her out of the church. And so this is the record that I'm looking for. But if you look at the index, she is not here. So you can see, here, let me go back. I'm going to close this for a second. You can see Elizabeth Henley is here, and there's Elizabeth Henley right there. And then Margaret Henley, formerly Clark, is not listed. There's Mary Clark, but there is not Margaret Clark. And then if we close this down a little bit, she is mentioned again later on. This is how you can find people, even if there are no indexes at all. You can go, okay, as long as you know place and time, and you can see how these records are organized, you can then kind of find your way to, and in this case, these kind of records, you have to actually read through them. So that's one way that you can find records in unindexed records. Unindexed records are really not that scary. You just have to kind of figure out how they're organized. And if they're totally loose leaf, then you may have to read through the whole document or the whole microfilm roll to really kind of see if you can find your ancestors. And sometimes that is worth the time. So just keep that in mind that, once you kind of figure out how they're indexed, whether they're in chronological order or alphabetical order, sometimes some of these records, you may see pages of A's, pages of B's, pages of C's, surnames, but they're not always in alphabetical order, so you need to pay attention to that. You also need to pay attention to the fact that one microfilm may start over several times, so you may go look for those, usually black frames or front matter, as you're scrolling through the microfilm so that you can see if maybe it starts over in a new district or it starts over in a new year. Just depends. You need to evaluate how those records are created in what order, if there's any logic to it at all. Most of the time there is. One more tip. Don't forget that sometimes these things are in reverse order, and that's called tails out. So sometimes it starts with Z and works to A. So again, just figure out how the microfilm roll was filmed or is organized or is laid out there for you. And sometimes it's easier to see on FamilySearch if you can find the same roll, because you can look at a whole grid of records at the same time. So there you go. I hope that was helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video.